Hello there, welcome to this edition of Global Business Africa. In the next half hour, we'll make a speed run through all the key business news stories you need to know about from across the African continent. I'm Ramanyangi in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Here's what's coming up. Nigeria revises its economic growth projections lower due to falling crude prices. Elsewhere, fuel stations in the Ethiopian capital are running out of fuel as falling prices are pushing up demand. And we'll be looking at a business that's making good of the Ebola situation in Liberia by printing Ebola awareness messages. Let's start tonight in Nigeria. The country's economy is forecast to grow by 5.5% in 2015. That's much lower than an earlier projection of 6.4%, and it's all due to lower oil revenues. Finance Minister Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala told Parliament while presenting next year's budget that new policies will have to focus on diversification from oil in order to protect the average Nigerian citizen. The $23 billion budget is based on an oil price assumption of about $65 a barrel rather than 77. Nigeria's government gets over 3/4 of its revenue from oil exports.
The 2015 to 2017 MTEF was prepared and transmitted to the National Assembly early in September 2014. And as we were gearing to have the main budget prepared and taken to the National Assembly in October, oil prices began to fall precipitously, threatening the benchmark oil price of $78 that had been proposed. So we had to have further engagements with the National Assembly leadership and committee chairs, with the benchmark being revised down to $73 per barrel. But then oil prices continued to fall precipitously, leading us to make further revisions to $65 per barrel. While Nigeria cannot control the price of oil, we can control our response to it. And this is what we have done by proposing this benchmark of 65. And let me hasten to say that we know that prices are falling even further than that. I already mentioned that the price is already at $58 per barrel for Brent crude, and it may fall even further. But the reason we have gone with the 65 is because all the price intelligence we've been able to gather from analysts and so on indicates that in 2015, prices will steady more than they have at the present.
Now, over in East Africa, the effects of falling oil prices are also being felt. Ethiopia, for example, is experiencing a fuel shortage, but not for the reasons you might think. You see, motorists are stocking up on cheaper petrol and diesel. Long queues actually forming in the capital and in other major cities.
Just a few days after the government announced a reduction in fuel prices, Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa, and other major cities were hit by a fuel shortage. Fuel prices are revised every month based on the international oil price, and gas stations usually get crowded in the last 3 days of the month, as motorists anticipate a price hike. But this time, the queues of cars waiting to fill up is steadily growing. Even petrol station managers are baffled by the shortage of diesel and benzene.
There is a shortage of oil across the city. I don't know how the problem was created, and I don't see any shortage of supply. The companies are distributing the oil in enough amounts. I do believe that the problem was caused by the dealers who did not place their orders on time. Here we have a problem of overcrowding, not shortage of fuel.
The Ministry of Trade says the demand for fuel in the city has tripled, as many car owners are buying petrol in bulk to use in cases of an emergency.
The shortage of oil was caused after fuel prices were revised. Our understanding was that the dealers did not make orders on time and created the problem. The oil companies in turn did not take the oil volume they were supposed to take from the Ethiopian fuel enterprise. 200 oil trucks which left the port of Djibouti to transport the oil into Addis Ababa did not come back, maybe due to the confusion created. What is happening now is either the dealers did not order or the companies are not delivering.
Whatever the reason for the fuel shortage, a significant number of motorists are being inconvenienced as the queues grow longer.
Yesterday I tried to fuel my car, but it was impossible. I couldn't find a nearby station filling gas. Today I can't go anywhere because my fuel tank is empty, so I'm working from here.
What is more, my company cannot get the job done. It is really destructive. I've been here since 12:30. I should have done a lot of work at the office.
The Ethiopian oil enterprise says it has enough fuel reserves and will deliver until the demand is met. More than 200 oil trucks are expected to arrive in the capital in the next few days. Voldi Karolsa, CCTV.
Now, still in fuel, but from an East African perspective, retail fuel prices in East Africa's biggest economy, that's Kenya, are right now at a 4-year low, about $1.10 per litre. Now, further falls are to be expected as the price of crude oil and refined products does continue to fall. After years of paying triple-digit prices for fuel, however, some Kenyan consumers expected a far bigger decline. After all, they ask, if Brent crude futures are over 40% lower from the June peak, why are retail prices in Kenya down by just 12% since August? That's a question I put earlier today to the Director General of Kenya's Energy Regulatory Commission, Joseph Ngaga.
We are dealing with two different products. They may be petroleum-based, but compare it, if I can give you an analogy of milk and butter and ghee or cheese. That's the kind of thing we are dealing with, because even though they are related, they have different demand and supply markets, and the dynamics are completely different. So when somebody goes to buy, for instance, butter in the supermarket, you don't ask the price of milk, because that's where it came from. So what we're dealing here with is refined products. That is what this country imports. And even while we know it comes from the crude oil, essentially they have different markets. And indeed, they have different markers and benchmarks.
So strictly speaking, Brent crude, WTI, for the Kenyan market, that's irrelevant. It doesn't matter.
It is irrelevant. Indeed, even when we were importing crude oil, our benchmark was Maban for the Middle East, because Brent is a marker for usually European and American
guys who essentially markets in the North Atlantic.
Exactly. Here we're dealing with refined products. Of course they come from crude, but as I've given to you, you shouldn't really be trying to relate to them with respect to the market dynamics, because they're very different. If I take, for instance, the issue of the refined products, the markers that one should be using should be the Platts mean. And for both the super, petrol, kerosene or diesel, we import from the Middle East. So the relevant benchmark that we should utilize would be the Platts.
But this isn't surely going to last forever. At some point, the glut will disappear, demand will come back. But do we have any idea when that will be? From your position as the regulator, what factors do you look at to tell you, okay, demand might pick up and therefore prices might then again need to rise?
Our prognosis so far is that they should be able to hold. The key driver here, or a tipping point, would be whether the fracking technology, for instance, at some juncture, would be so expensive that one would rather actually buy from the market, because that certainly will change the dynamics. And then the other thing is, perhaps there could be geopolitical factors, and maybe Saudi Arabia may decide to not defend its market and therefore hold back in terms of the supply in the market. It's very hard to predict, but in the short term, we foresee them holding, and therefore we expect that the benefits accruing from the general reduction in prices should be able to come to this market. It's not an issue of if, I think it's when. And I think when you hear some of the feedback we get from the market, people are wondering if ever they will come. I think what happens is, because we import products through the open tender system, we take about 30 to 45 days to have the products come from the Middle East to the local market. And when, for instance, somebody asks about the current prices, the cargo,
about the cargo that came in November, October.
Actually, it's October. Yeah. So you should, if you're comparing legitimately, you should actually be looking at the prices that were prevailing for refined products in October. The benefits that are now, for instance, the $55, if you hold on, will probably come if you buy the cargo now in another maybe 30 to 45 days.
There's a bit of concern from tallow, Africa oil, that sort of sector, that if prices remain where they are now $50, $60 a barrel, that perhaps oil exploration up north in places like Turkana might no longer be viable. What sort of feedback are you getting from exploration firms in northern Kenya?
I do believe there is a significant concern, not just in Kenya, but in terms of the flip side of this benefit. You actually find that when they're looking, for instance, in terms of development, they are working on a particular reserve, a find, for instance, if you look at it from that point of view. And if you look at that volume, you probably will use the prevailing market price to cost it, and then you can be able to see the justification of your investment and your payback time. Those dynamics will change if you have the same volume and the price halves. Clearly, the only way you can be able to have an equilibrium is to have an additional reserve that you explore. And in most cases, it probably will be imprudent. So they may hold the activities until the prices again are attractive.
Is that confirmed? Have Tullow said we're going to stop, or Africa Oil and Company, have they said they're going to stop exploration?
No,
not yet.
Thank God.
Not yet.
Yeah, no.
Okay. My conversation there with the ARC Director General a little earlier in the day. We're still in East Africa. Tanzania's Attorney General Frederick Werema has resigned. He's the first casualty in an energy graft scandal that's caused Western donors to delay aid to the East African nation. His resignation comes in the wake of a vote in Parliament last month calling on the government to dismiss senior officials, including the AG, for their role in an energy deal which lawmakers say was entirely fraudulent. Tanzania has an estimated 53.2 trillion cubic feet of gas reserves right off its southern coastline, but its energy sector has long been dragged down by allegations of graft. Lawmakers found the officials fraudulently authorized the transfer of at least $122 million of public funds to a private company. Now, the funds came from an escrow account held jointly by the state power company TANESCO and the independent power producer IPTL. And the cash went to IPTL's beneficial owner, Pan Africa Power, in 2013. Over in West Africa, Cote d'Ivoire has opened its first toll bridge. The Henri Conan Bedi Bridge connects Abidjan's residential Riviera district directly with the commercial district of Makori. It is the third bridge in Abidjan. It's expected to ease quite a bit of traffic congestion on the other two. Now, it's one of the largest public-private partnerships in the country in the last 10 years, with a total investment of more than 270 million euros. The project consists of 4.7 kilometers of access roads and the 1.9 kilometer toll bridge over the Ebri Lagoon in Abidjan. It was officially inaugurated by Cote d'Ivoire's President Alassane Ouattara earlier on Wednesday.
Je voudrais que le pont Henri Conan Bédier nous rappelle à tous que unis.
I would like the Henry Conan Bedi Bridge to remind us all that we are united, confident and at peace. We can transform our country. We can make it even bigger, radiating beyond our borders, bringing well-being and pride to each and every one of our citizens and all people living on Ivorian soil.
Et à chacune de nos compatriotes.
La confiance que chaque parti jouera sa partition.
A long-term project like this is based on a factor called confidence. Confidence that each party will play its part for the years to come. The risk taken by all stakeholders, the proponent, financial partners, is counterbalanced by the trust placed in the country itself. A stable country that will respect all its commitments, whether in terms of pricing or dispute regulations.
Quick run through the markets here for you. Another day of red ink right across the board. The Nigerian, Kenyan, South African, Egyptian indices all drifting much lower. The NSE in Nigeria down by about 2.78% in trading today. Even larger figures being seen in percentage terms, at least over in Egypt. The contagion that we saw yesterday across Middle Eastern markets, Dubai's index going down by 7%, Saudi Arabia down by a similar margin, still very much affecting trading over in Egypt. We're taking a short break, but there's plenty more content coming up. We'll see you in 60 seconds.
This report by the African Green Revolution Alliance says climate change will slash food output. Within the next 30 years, the number of malnourished people in sub-Saharan Africa could jump nearly 40%.
Welcome back to the program. You're still watching Global Business Africa. Now, the BRICS grouping of emerging market nations is the leading source of illicit capital from the developing world. That's according to data in a new report that was released earlier this week. In its annual estimate of illegal capital flows, the Washington-based think tank Global Financial Integrity said a record $991 billion was siphoned out in 2012 from the world's developing economies. That's 5% higher from the figure in 2011. A little earlier today, I spoke to GFI's president, Raymond Baker. Our conversation started by me asking him why South Africa and Nigeria are the leading sources of capital flight in Africa.
Essentially, we're talking about the underpricing of exports coming out. Nigeria and South Africa are the biggest resource exporters in sub-Saharan Africa, but other countries are experiencing a similar phenomenon.
Indeed. Will initiatives like the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative perhaps help to some extent to reduce these levels in any way?
I think it's extremely helpful that resource companies are being required to file information on what they are paying to governments. We would hope that that would be extended in time to take a broader look at resource industries and determine also what they may be taking out of the continent.
But that, of course, would require a country-by-country reporting measure for the taxes paid and the sales in those respective countries as well, would it not?
It would, and we favor that. That's one of the things that we advocate, is the importance of country-by-country reporting. We see EITI, and indeed the Publish What You Pay initiative and the Dodd-Frank Act in the United States as all contributing toward eventually moving to country-by-country reporting.
Indeed. A lot of these losses, according to a report, over 67, in some cases cumulatively 75% plus, occur via trade misinvoicing. Now, a lot of countries in Africa would then say, yes, but perhaps our systems are not up to scratch in terms of being able to detect when such trade misinvoicing occurs. Is that an argument that you would find legitimate?
It is a legitimate argument, but it's not the whole argument. Don't forget that when money flows out of one country, it flows into another country. So it is a two-way street addressing this problem. Indeed, the high-level panel on illicit financial flows out of Africa, led by His Excellency Thabo Mbeki, former president of South Africa, will be making this point very clearly in its report, which comes out in January, that curtailing this phenomenon, illicit money flowing out of Africa, requires work on the part of both African countries and Western countries, which are receiving so much of this money.
What would you like to see done by authorities in sub-Saharan Africa and in the recipient G20 nations to actually end this problem decisively over the long term?
The short answer to your question is transparency. Greater transparency in financial systems. Greater transparency in domestic financial systems and in the international financial systems. So we advocate greater financial transparency, and then we advocate something else, and that is to make available to customs departments in Africa and in the developing world readily accessible world market pricing data, so that a customs department in real time can look at a transaction, an export or an import, punch a computer key and get an idea as to whether that transaction is priced roughly in accordance with world market norms. It's a risk assessment mechanism that we think can be extremely valuable to developing countries, and it is data that is becoming increasingly available.
Indeed. We'll have to leave it there for the time being. Mr. Raymond Baker from the Global Financial Integrity Group, thank you very much for your time right now. My conversation earlier, of course, with Raymond Baker. Now, quick run through commodity prices here for you. We're seeing a bit of a bounce as far as oil prices are concerned. Brent crude having a bit of a lift coming through in the markets right now. 62.36. It's up about $2 in the last couple of minutes. Western Texas Intermediate crude, however, also having a bit of a bounce up around $59 or so a barrel. Life hands you a couple of lemons, you make some lemonade out of it, and that's exactly what a business is doing in Liberia. We'll have the details on that and plenty more next.
BizAsia. Asia means business.
Welcome back. Signs of life are slowly returning to the streets of Monrovia, Liberia's capital, as people start to rebuild their lives and start shopping for goods ahead of Christmas in a couple of days' time. Now, CCTV's Angelo Coppola was there. He met a small business owner in the capital who runs a printing press. In Grassroots Tonight, this is a story of Harriet Harris, who in her own way is helping the fight against Ebola.
There are many small, medium and micro businesses in Monrovia. Some businesses have stuck to their guns and do what they do best because they have a specific skill that is required. The market has changed around them, but they continue.
Most of my business comes from NGOs.
Most of my business comes from NGOs like USAID, ActionAid, the government of Liberia, the finance ministry and the banks.
Ministry of Post and Telecom.
The epidemic has affected Harriet's business badly, but they have managed to stay afloat.
Business been struggling, like business have not been coming in.
Business has been struggling. For example, we printed t-shirts for schools, but the schools have been closed indefinitely. But we still have some printing for Ebola t-shirts.
Business have been slow, but yes, we have been printing some Ebola awareness t-shirt.
With Christmas fast approaching, it appears people still have a little money for an old tradition.
Been doing Christmas cards this year. Because next week
we do Christmas cards, so the customers make their orders for the cards and the banners.
So they are all put in for Christmas cards and banners.
These streets in Monrovia here were teeming with people doing business, buying stuff, buying goods, trading and all kinds of things. Since the Ebola crisis struck, business has dropped off, there's no question. However, in the printing sector, lots of t-shirts, lots of information is being shared in the printed word. It works for this business. I'm Angelo Coppola for CCTV in Monrovia, Liberia.
It's estimated that 3.5 million tonnes of food is wasted in the UK every year. But a shop in South London has found a way to give surplus food that supermarkets can't sell, apparently, a new lease of life. The UK's first full-scale community supermarket offers discounts on products of up to 70%. Now, these goods come from large retailers, Tesco's, Marks & Spencer, you name it, and they can't sell it either because the packaging is damaged or there's a small mistake or some other error in labelling. The shop operates on a membership basis. It's limited to local residents who are receiving benefits. The company behind it is planning to open 20 more such stores across the country. Now, the shop includes a cafe that serves leftover food as well. They also offer work placement support and debt advice to customers, back on track.
The challenges behind the scenes, the logistics of how you collect and transport and safely store very large volumes of surplus food.
We used the food bank and decided that it's the best option to come and see what type of things they are offering, and what they offer is priceless. They offer you dignity.
All right, then a quick run through currencies here for you. The Egyptian pound, of course, on official rate, still around the 7.15 level. That hasn't changed. Not the black market, however, sending a completely different signal. The Kenyan shilling, a bit of strengthening coming through there. 90.40, the latest number that we're seeing there, quite in contrast to the 90.15, 90.60 levels we've seen over the last couple of days. Now then, here's what we're working on for tomorrow's show. We'll still be in Liberia looking for tips on how businesses can and are surviving the Ebola outbreak in that particular part of the world. And of course, a little later on, the low-cost airline Skywise will be launching into South African skies early in 2015. Will it survive? What's its strategy? What should you expect as a client? All that and more will be covered in tomorrow's program. But that's it for this edition of Global Business for today. Send your feedback over to us, globalbusinessafrica@cctv.com is the email to use. And of course, when we're not on air, Facebook and Twitter are your ports of call. The news continues over there 24/7. We'll see you in 23 hours. I'm Ramanya.